Hey everyone, in this video, I'll show you how to make this load more button. There's a link to the source file in the video description if you'd like to follow along. You can either download the file or use the open and drive button if you just want to get in the file, poke around, see how things are set up or anything like that. So with that being said, let's hop into it. Okay, before we actually hop into animate mode and get this button moving, let's go ahead and take a look at the button itself, see how it's set up. So as always, I have my button set up on a root group so that if we ever need to resize it, reposition it, or anything like that, we can do that at any point, even after we've created animations, and we don't have to worry about affecting any of the keys that we've set up. Now below the root group, we've got our load more button, and we can use this group here if we want to actually animate the entire button at the same time. And then below that group, we've got all of the different shapes that make up our button. So we've got our background, and we've got the different ellipses here that make up our the little portion that we're actually going to animate. Now, with the ellipses themselves, I spaced them out an equal distance apart, as you can see here. And the way I did this was, first I created a group and centered it on the stage. So you can see that the root group here is at 250 by 250. And if I remove this load more button here, you can see it's in the same spot. So this group itself is actually centered on the artboard. And the reason I did that is so now I can just create an ellipse and drag it into that group, and instead of using the world coordinates, it's actually using local coordinates. So it's positioning itself based off of where the group itself is. So if I just type in 0, 0 there to the position, you can see it centers itself on the group, and I've already centered that group on the stage. So or the artboard. So it will center on the button itself. And then to get the spacing, I just decided, what exactly the spacing was going to be. So I went with 40 in the X. I duplicated that center ellipse and then typed in 40, and you can see it's spaced out 40 from here. And then I duplicated again, added 40 to that number, so 80, and then once more 120, and we've got our spacing. Now that's in the right direction. If we go to the left, we're going to want to use negative numbers, so negative 40, negative 80, and negative 120. Okay, so now that we've looked at the button, we've seen how it's all set up, let's actually hop into animate mode and take a look at the final product before we actually start creating any animations. Okay, so as you can see from the state machine and the animations list here, we've got 4 different animations, and they're all going to play their part to make this button work. So if we play the state machine, you can see that the button is just sort of sitting in an idle state, and this is how it would look if it was just sitting there waiting for somebody to click on it. Now, once someone clicks on it, you can see that it goes into another idle animation where this ellipse is bouncing up and down, and that's the loading animation itself, and you can see it sitting there idling. And then once whatever it is that we're loading more of is finished loading, we'll go back to this more idle. Now, if you look at this, like we have 2 idles, so we've got the more idle and then the load idle. To get back and forth between those 2 animations, we need 2 transitional animations. So we've got the more load start animation and the more load finish animation. So it's just these 2 animations are just to get us back and forth between those 2 idles. So let's actually go ahead and start creating these animations, and then we'll set them up in the state machine. Okay, so if you remember our state machine, the first animation we need is the more idle animation. So just the button sitting here in this configuration. So what we're going to do is open up our load more group, go ahead and grab all the ellipses there, and set position and scale keys. So X and Y position for both position and scale. And that's all we need to do for this animation. Now let's rename this before we create a new one. So let's call this more underscore idle, and then create a new animation. Okay, so for this animation, what we're going to do is we need to create that transitional animation that'll get us into that loading idle animation. So let's call this animation here more underscore load underscore start. And we need this animation to start in the same configuration as our more idle. So I'm just going to select all of these keys that we've already created here, copy those, and paste them at the beginning of the timeline of our new animation. And then what we're going to do is actually have these ellipses go to the center of the button so that they're all on top of each other. And then we'll have that center ellipse start bouncing. Now, we don't want the ellipses to just go from this configuration straight to the middle. We want to create some anticipation to get the viewer ready for the next action. So to do that, what we're going to do is go to 15F on the timeline. And I'm going to spread all of these ellipses out from the center, except for the middle one. So let's start with the right one and left one here. So I'm just going to add 10 to this value. So I'm going to go to 50, then go to left one, and we'll go to -50. All right, now let's go on to our second ellipses in the chain there. So instead of just adding 10, let's add 20. So let's go to 100. And the reason that I'm doing this is if we just add 10 here, that we're not getting the same spacing. So we actually want the same spacing between all of the ellipses at the whole time. So again, we need to add 20. So we need to go to 100. And then we need to go to -100 on this left one. And then we'll go to right 3 and left 3 here. So let's add 30 to this. So let's go to 150. And then on the left 3, we'll go to -150. Okay, so the spacing there looks fine. Let's take a look at that. Okay, that looks pretty good. Now what we want to do is have these ellipses collapse into the center. So we'll keep the same timing here. We'll use that 15 millisecond timing we've already established. So we'll go to 30 because that's 15 away from 15. And bring them to the center of the button. Now, all we need to do is select our ellipses here that we have multiple keys set for, and go to that X position value and just type in 0, and you can see that they all collapse into the center of the button because, again, they're using the local coordinates and not the global ones. So let's add some easing to this and make sure that we've got the movement correct here. So select all those keys and add the cubic easing, and let's preview that and see what we think. Okay, so it looks all right, but I'm going to adjust these curves a little bit. So I'm going to select the first keys here for all of my ellipses that are actually moving right now. And I'm going to give them a really explosive curve so they go out really quickly, and then we'll have them linger there and then collapse down quickly again. So this should get us to the outside quickly. Let's select these second keys here and give it a lot of ease in so that it'll transition into this next key slowly at first and then really quickly towards the end. About right here, they'll all collapse in. So let's take a look at that and see what we think. Okay, so I think that's going to be good for our anticipation. Now what we need to do is have the middle ellipse start bouncing. But if we move the middle ellipse right now, you can see that we have all the other ellipses stacked up behind it. So we actually need to hide those. So what we're going to do is go here to the beginning of the timeline, select all of those ellipses on the outside, and set an opacity key for 100 so that we know that they start at 100. And then when they collapse behind the middle one, we need to turn them off. So let's give that opacity value, we'll set a 0 opacity key there. And now when we move that middle ellipse, you can see that none of those ellipses are visible anymore. Now, if we preview that, you can see that our ellipses are slowly fading from 100% opacity to 0, but we don't want that to happen. We want them to stay with that 100% opacity value all the way until they get to here and then turn off. So what we're going to do is go through each one of these objects here that we have keyed and grab the first ellipse key and change their interpolation from linear to hold, and that will hold that 100 value all the way until the last key where they'll go instantly to 0. So let me just go through and Set the interpolation up here. Okay, just a few more. All right, last one. Okay, let's take a look at that and make sure everything is working correctly. Okay, so it looks like everything's working fine there. Now we can actually move on and have this ellipse start bouncing. So what we're going to do is use the same 15 millisecond timing and just continue that across the timeline. So this mid key that we have set here, if you remember, we've got position keys and scale keys set. So instead of having that key here at the beginning of the timeline, what I'm going to do is move this key that we have set to the middle of the timeline so that it's aligned with where our ellipses collapse to the center. And then we can actually have the ellipse go up and then down. So let's go ahead 15 milliseconds on the timeline to 45. And let's go up. So let's go to -40. All right, and then we'll have it come down, and we want the spacing when it comes down to be the same from the top of the ellipse to the top of the button, and we'll do the same with the bottom of the ellipse and the bottom of the button. So let's go here to the end of the timeline, and if you remember, we're using the coordinates of the local coordinates for the group here, so we can just type in 40, and we're gonna have this. We're gonna end up with the same spacing here that we have up top. Okay, so now we can add some easing in here. So let me just select all these keys and add that cubic easing. Now we're going to use the same easing that we used on these ellipses, where we'll have that explosive curve at the beginning, and then the second key will have it ease in and then quickly change to the next one. So let's go through and set that up. So we've got our explosive key here. And then we'll have a lot of ease in on the second one, and that should look pretty good. So let's take a look at that. Okay, so that looks good, but when you make a bouncing animation, what you really want to do is add in squash and stretch, because it makes it a lot more interesting. So we'll do that by setting some scale keys. So if you remember, we've already got our first scale keys set up here. And we need to actually stretch this ball in the Y direction, because it's moving really fast in that direction. And if you pay attention to the scale values I'm using 90 for the X and 110 for the Y. Now the reason I'm using those specific values is you want to keep your volume, the volume of your object that you're squashing and stretching, in mind. And if I go 10% in the X, I want to add 10% to the Y. If you don't do that, it may become, your object may look a little weird in real time, but if you're keeping the same volume, you'll always be happy with the result. So we've got it stretching here, and then we need it to go back to its original scale. So I'm just going to copy these first two keys here for the scale and paste it here where the ellipse is at the top of its Y movement. And then we're going to need to stretch it again, because as it moves down, it's going to move down quickly. So we need to find where it's moving down quickly. Looks like right there. Oop, pasted the wrong values there. Let me grab the right ones here. Okay. And then when it gets to the bottom, we need it to squash. So we're going to use the same values that we have here. We're just going to flip them around. So we'll put in 110 on the X and 90 on the Y. Now let's take a look at that in real time and make sure that we're happy with the result. Okay, I think we actually need to scoot this stretch value back here. All right, and I think it's going a little too quickly from this value to the next. So I'm going to add in some ease in there. Okay, so that might look good. Okay, So I think we're good with this animation. We can go ahead and make that load idle animation. So let's create a new animation here. And let's call it more underscore load underscore idle. And we need this animation to start in the same place that this more load start animation finishes. So let's start by grabbing our the keys that we set here at the end for our middle ellipse. Copy those, paste it to the beginning. And then you can see all these other ellipses are also in the wrong configuration. So let's get the right keys for that. And so we just need to copy the last keys here, which is these keys here at 30F. So let's copy those, paste them at the beginning of the timeline. So you can see all of our ellipses are at the center of the button, and they're all at 0% opacity. Okay, so we've already established our timing. So we know that from the bottom of the bounce to the top of the bounce, it needs to be 15 milliseconds. And then to get from the top of the bounce back to the bottom, it needs to be another 15 milliseconds. So we can shorten our timeline down to just 30 milliseconds. And let's just go ahead and add those keys. So go to the center of the timeline, so 15F. And what I'm going to do is go to this more load start animation and find where that ellipse is at the top of the bounce. So the key here at 45F, I'm just going to copy that, go back to the load idle and paste it at 15. And we've got 1/2 of our loop set already. So I'm just going to select this first key to go ahead and close the loop and paste it at the end of the timeline. Now the only thing that we don't have here is our scale keys, and then we need to go and set up our easing so that everything looks right. So let's just start at the beginning and make sure we have everything correct. Okay, we need to go ahead and stretch the ellipse out. So if you remember, we were using 110 for the Y and 90 for the X when it stretches up. Okay, and then it needs to return to its original scale, which it is. And then it's going to need to stretch out again. So we just created those stretch keys. I'm going to paste those in where I see it moving the most, which is about right there. And then it needs to go back down to its squashed state. Okay, so let's start with the position keys here and make sure that we have all the right easing curves set up. So from the down and squashed position here, we want it to explode up. So take all that ease in out. Bang, it's going up really quick. I'm going to go ahead and just apply the normal cubic curves here to the second scale key. Okay. And then looks like we have the right curve here for our second Y key, where it's going to stay there for a second and then quickly start going down to the ground. Let me make sure I've got cubic easing on this. Okay, so let's take a look at that. Before we do that, let's change the playback type from one shot to loop, and let's preview that and see if we're happy with it. Okay, so this idle animation looks relatively good. I think we're going to be okay with that. So we need to add in our last animation. Now, if you remember what the last animation is, it's another transitional animation to get us from the load idle back to the more idle animation. So let's add a new animation and call it more underscore load underscore finish. And what we need to do is have this animation start where the more load idle animation finishes. So once again, I'm going to select the last key for the middle ellipse here and paste it at the beginning of the load finish animation. And then we need all of these ellipses here to start in the center with that opacity turned off. So I'm just going to select these keys here, these beginning keys for all of our other ellipses from the load idle, and paste those in. I don't think I quite got them. Hang on. Let me grab those, copy, paste. Okay, so they're centered and their opacity's off. Now, what we're going to do is, once again, we don't want this middle ellipse to just go back to the center and then have the other ellipses spread back out. So let's actually finish, let's have it go one more loop of the jump. So we'll make it go up and then it'll come down into the center. So once again, using the same timing that we've established, that 15 millisecond timing, let's have the ellipse go back up to the top. So this, and then paste it here. We need that stretch key that was created. So I'm going to grab this here. And let's see, it's 4 milliseconds from the start of the timeline. So paste that. Okay. Looks pretty good. Let's make sure all of our easing curves are still right on this. Change that. That looks good. That looks good. Oop, need to change those. Okay. All right, now we can bring it down into the center. Once again, using the 15 millisecond timing. So we're going to go to 30. And let's have it just come back down to the center of the button. So I'm going to go ahead and type 0 in for the Y value. And maybe we can just leave the squash and stretch off. We'll see that at real time later, and if we don't like it, we can fix it. Okay, so now what we need is to actually animate the rest of these ellipses. So if you remember, what we're going to do is have them stretch back out. But again, we don't want them to go straight to their final position. We want them to go past their final position and then into their final position. So continuing with the same 15 millisecond timing, I'm going to go ahead and drag all the keys that were at the start to this point here, because this is where their motion's actually going to start. And we'll go to 45, and what we need to do is stretch them out. So we already have that value set, and I believe it's in the more load start animation. Yep, it seems like it's this key here, or these keys here at 15F. So I'm going to copy those, paste them into the 45 there. Now you can see that we haven't set any opacity keys here. The opacity keys here are set for 0, and we actually need to change those to 100. So just make sure I have these keys selected here, and then go ahead and change their opacity to 100. Now you can see that because we've changed that value, they're no longer hidden at the beginning of our animation, which we still need to go through that single loop of the bounce, or half of the bounce. So we're going to do what we did for this load start animation and set the value that we need at the beginning of the timeline, and then we'll just change all the easing curves here to hold, and it should hold that that opacity value until here, where they spread out, which it looks like they are. And then we need to return them to their final position at the end of the timeline. So we've once again got we have those keys. So I'm just going to go ahead and, instead of copying the opacity keys, I'm going to go through and copy all of the different position keys. So I'm going to open up the object. For the first one, I'm just going to marquee select. Now for all the other ones, I'm going to hold shift to select, and you can see that's just adding to my selection. Just go through that and just add each one of these position keys to my selection here. Remember, just hold shift. Okay, so it seems like we have all that. Now we can copy those and paste them to the end of the timeline. Now let's make sure we have the right curves here set. So let's preview everything and then fix our curves. Okay, so obviously we don't have the right curves set up here. So let's go through and fix those. So I'm going to select these second keys here at 30F for all of our outside ellipses. Just go ahead and change their interpolation to cubic, and then we'll have them explosively go out. Select the second one, and they look like they have the right curve on them. So let's preview that again and see if we like it. Okay, So I think we're done with this animation. Things look good, and feel free to go back and rewatch these sections if you missed any of it. But I think we're ready to actually set this up on the state machine. So let's go through and add a state machine. And let's go ahead and drag out our animations onto the graph in the order that we're going to use them. So we need the more idle first, and then we need the more load start into the more load idle, and then the more load finish. So these are this is the order of the animations in which they're going to play. We're going to start with the idle, go to the load start, load idle, load finish, and then back to more idle. Now, keeping them all in a row is going to make things kind of difficult. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and drag this more load finish here to sort of make a triangle, because the path that they're going to follow is here to here to here, and then we need to reset. So instead of having to draw a transition that goes all the way back, and you might get it confused with these two, if we just reposition this, we can have the transition be a little more a little easier to find. So let's go ahead and add our transition. So let's create a transition from entry to more idle, and then we'll just continue following the path here like so. Now you can see we've got a triangle, and we can see all of our transitions, so it'll be easy to get in there and actually configure those. Now, if we play the state machine now, you can see that we are just we're stuck in the more idle state, and our ellipses have on the outside have disappeared. So we're going to need to troubleshoot that. But before we do that, let's get as much of this set up as we can, and then we can go back and troubleshoot things. Okay, so obviously we need an input because we haven't added one yet. And what we're going to use is a Boolean, because we need to hold a true or false value for long periods of time, or potentially long periods of time. So I'm going to add that Boolean in, and let's rename that loading. So we can either have loading be true or loading be false. Now on the entry, we'll just have that at its default, because we always want it to start here. And so to get it to move away from more idle into these animations here, we need to make sure that loading is true. So when we go into the transition and we add our condition in that loading Boolean, we want to make sure that this second drop down is set to true. So when we're loading, we're going to go from more idle to the load start. And then we want to go to the more load idle. So I'm just going to go ahead and add in that transition there. And then to go from load idle back to more idle, we want that to happen when loading is finished. So it'll be false. So let's go to conditions, loading, change this bottom drop down from true to false. Let's do the same thing on this other one, like so. And now if we preview it, let's see what happens. Okay, so we're starting in the more idle position, which is good. And then when I go to true, it just seems like it just skips this animation here and goes straight to load idle. Now what happens if we uncheck this? It once again skips the transitional animation and just goes right back to more idle. Now, let's get these ellipses over here appearing. Now, I know what the problem is, but to diagnose this, what you want to do is make sure that if you change the property, so if you change the property in one animation or one state and you go away from that state, you want to make sure that any of the properties that are changed in these animations are keyed in this animation here. So what I mean by that is we've changed the position, scale, and opacity of all of these different ellipses here. And all we did was set keys for the position and scale. So they will return to the correct position and scale, but they don't have that same value to mix back to, because that's what we're doing, is we're mixing these values we're mixing these animations together. So to fix this, we need to go to the more idle animation, select all of our ellipses on the outside, and go ahead and key that 100% opacity. So now when it returns to this state, or this animation, it knows that these ellipses need to be at 100% opacity. So let's preview the state machine again and make sure that it fixed the problem. And it does. Okay, so we've got the right configuration here. Everything seems like it can return to. It seems like we can return the button back to its original state. But now we need to set up these transitions here. Now, if you think about how we've set up each one of these animations, they start. So this animation starts at the end of this one. This one starts at the end of this one, and so on and so forth, all the way to the end here. So what we want is each one of these animations to play fully before going to the next animation. So the way we're going to do that is go through each one of these transitions. Now this transition doesn't matter too much, but we'll just do it all the way across to keep things consistent. We'll enable the exit time, and what this is going to tell the previous animation is how much of that animation needs to play before going to the next one. Now we can do this in milliseconds or seconds, so milliseconds or percents. So if you remember how long your animations are, you can tell it exactly how long you want it to take, or you can just use a percent. So I'm just going to type in a 100%, and that's telling this transition not to happen until this animation is played all the way. So let's go ahead and set that up for all of our animations here. And then once we do that, we can go and preview the state machine and make sure everything's working correctly. All right, so let's check it out, make sure everything's working correct. Okay, so our first transition works right. And our second transition works correctly. So that's it. We've got our load more button. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, make sure you leave a comment in the video, and we'll try to address those as quickly as possible. If you followed along, make sure that you share this on the community. If you use, the button, or you make your own button, because I like to see what you're working on, and I'll drop by and leave you a comment. So hope you enjoy the tutorial, and I hope you stop by for another one. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you in the next one.